Spider-Man Brand New Day is a film that really surprised me because while we got so many things right, we also got one big thing wrong? Welcome back, everyone. Today we're here to talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day. This is a new MCU film that just came out. The whole crew is back again, and we have some new characters added into the mix. Some new characters to Spider-Man, but not new to the MCU. And one big new character, but we're going to talk about that later in the video because I do want to avoid spoilers for the first bit. So I'll give you a spoiler warning when we're getting there for those that want to hear my thoughts on this film without any spoilers. I also have a full spoiler-free review where I talk about some of the stuff I'm going to talk about later, but not in a way that's spoilery. So if you want to check that out, become a Golden Fang Gang member on my channel and you can access all of my members only content. Before we get into this, I want to know, who is your favorite Spider-Man villain? Let me know down in the comments below. Let's set up the story for you, shall we? Spider-Man, where is he at? Well, it's 4 years later after the events of No Way Home, and he is in New York City, and he's not doing so great, to be honest. He's keeping it together. He's fighting a lot of villains, but he's going through some changes. He is evolving. His mutation is changing. And yet Spider-Man is sort of in denial of this. He doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to evolve. He wants to hold on to his youth and keep things as they were when he was happy. And he doesn't want to confront the awful things that have happened to him in his past. He doesn't want to confront the chaos that's going on around him and the fact that he's struggling to handle it. So that is a lot of what we're dealing with here. It's really a film that made me consider what Spider-Man represents. And I talked about this recently in my Into the Spider-Verse re-review, but I never really considered how much Spider-Man is a stand-in for problems in our life like anxiety or ADHD, or even to a lesser extent, but I think this is still a big part of Spider-Man's journey in the comics and in the movies, depression. He deals with that as well. And when it comes to this character, it was cool to see him taking on these more internal struggles in the film because it made me realize how much I love Spider-Man because I connect with him in the sense of someone that always needs to be distracted because they don't want to necessarily face what's in front of them. That is something that I have had a tendency to do my entire life, dealing with things like burnout and overdoing your workload. Hello, yes, I feel you, Spider-Man. And this other idea of kind of escaping into your work so you can kind of run away from what's going on internally, which is what Spider-Man is doing here. Peter is using Spider-Man as a way to escape all of the feelings that he has as Peter about everything that's happened to him up to this point. The other thing that I love in this movie is how far we take people not knowing who Spider-Man is. Spider-Man's identity is back to being secret, and that is a huge element in the movie, and I love the way that they approached it throughout the film and what that does to Peter. I mean, he truly is alone. No one knows that he's Spider-Man anymore. He has no one in his corner. Aunt May is gone. It's really probably one of the most tragic movies for the character, even though we're coming out of Homecoming, and that one was pretty rough for Peter. Now, to showcase all of the villains that he's taking on in the beginning of the film and everything that's just going on with him as he's traversing across the city and dealing with so many issues, we have some really, really beautiful cinematography. And this DOP you might be familiar with as well. He is Brett Pollock, who is a cinematographer, a director of photography that you also might know from Wonder Man. He actually did the DOP work on 4 episodes of Wonder Man as well. And man, he just does such a gorgeous job with this film. It's really cool. It's like you're in the mindset, you're in the place of Spider-Man as he's swinging around the city and dealing with all of this. And I think something that I really appreciate about the direction for this film is how much we are closely tied to Spider-Man's journey throughout it, whether that's through the cinematography, the story, or even the action. There's a lot of really good action in this movie. And I mean, hats off to Destin Daniel Cretton, who is the director for the film, who you also might know from Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is one of my favorite MCU films, like full stop. I really loved that movie. I'm very excited for Shang-Chi to return. So seeing the action here and seeing how much that is also tying into Spider-Man's journey, Peter's journey, there's so many important story moments that are happening in those fights. And that is something that I love about action. If you're new to the channel, I'm a big action nerd. I really love stunts. I really love fight choreography. And the fight choreography in this was amazing. And I believe our fight coordinator that we had for this film is the same that we had for Shang-Chi, which is Peng Zong, who does an amazing job with this. And I think the thing about fights and why I love them so much is when they're done well, they serve a really important place in the story. And we get to experience these character moments with Peter where he's dealing with these threats that feel super challenging, where he's confused about what's going on. So the fight isn't just about what's happening with Spider-Man and these other characters. It's also about what's happening for Spider-Man internally. And it's not just stunts that look amazing, it's also stunts that serve the story. And of course, what would the fight choreography be without some cool characters to throw in there? And we do have some really great supporting characters joining Peter in this movie, including Jon Bernthal's Punisher and Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. Now, when it comes to Jon Bernthal's Punisher, wow, I did not know how much I needed to see Punisher and Spider-Man team up in the MCU. But friends, I really needed that, I think. Jon Bernthal and Tom Holland acting opposite each other in this film is just, mwah, it is perfection. They have such great on-screen chemistry. And there is this one scene where they're talking about what happened on Staten Island and they're just talking over top of each other. And it was an absolute masterpiece of flow. I never truly realized the parallels between Spider-Man and Punisher and what unites them together, because that is strong. These are both characters that have suffered immense loss in their lives. They are both people that kind of feel alone in the world. They both kind of choose to isolate themselves at times. And on top of that, they deal with immense guilt and the responsibility of inaction and the consequences of that in their own lives. So while it's interesting because Punisher and Spider-Man have such different sort of moral codes in terms of how they approach heroism, there is actually a lot that ties them together in a way that I'm surprised. I actually feel it runs deeper even than Punisher and Daredevil. I think I like it even more than that. And I really like Punisher and Daredevil. So wow, that was really neat. And the parallels that we draw in this film don't just end with Punisher. They do continue as well into the character of the Hulk who is here, Bruce Banner. And Bruce Banner is really interesting, having him here and in this role as kind of a bit of a mentor to Peter, someone who's giving him some advice. Peter comes to him looking for some help with what's going on with his mutation changing. And, you know, he's coming to him asking for this advice. And what I love about it is I love that the Hulk, well, Bruce, really, he's not the Hulk at the time, just Bruce. He's telling him, you know, messing with genes, messing with genetics is a dangerous thing, because how do you get to decide what's good and what's bad? And I love the irony of this coming from someone like Bruce Banner, a guy who constantly is manipulating that stuff in himself because he's trying to suppress this darker side. He's trying to suppress the Hulk. And yet him saying, you know, maybe we shouldn't do that is very, very wild. The other cool thing about Hulk here, I guess this is a bit of a light spoiler, so I'll give you a spoiler warning now for this, but know that this next one I'm about to say is light. And then after that, we're going to get into it. So fair warning. Something that I really loved about this movie is that when it comes to the Hulk, we get to also continue his story. We get to see Savage Hulk return. And I think the interesting element of Mark Ruffalo's Hulk is that this entire time, while Bruce is trying to sell us on the fact that he's getting better, he's making strides, he's made peace with the Hulk, he's become Professor Hulk, he's now found a way to completely suppress the Hulk through a device where he's manipulating his genes, which is why I say it is very strange of Bruce to say something like this to Peter. But what it feels like what we're doing here is drawing the parallels between Spider-Man dealing with this monster inside of him, this mutation he can't quite control, and Bruce, who also has this monster inside of him, the Hulk, that he also can't quite control. But the reality is, even though these are darker sides of the characters that are coming out, it doesn't have to be bad. The Hulk is a hero, ultimately, and Spider-Man is a hero. And even though there are things in our lives that we can't control and there is chaos, sometimes when we just accept that that's the way the world is, it gives us power, it gives us agency over what's happening so that we can accept what's going on with us. Because the reality is there are so many things in the world that you cannot control, including sometimes your emotions. You need to let them exist, but you need to find healthy outlets for them. I just loved everything we did with the parallels to these characters, to both the Punisher and the Hulk. However, I didn't love everything about this movie when it came to the characterizations. So let's talk about my big whoopsie. And to me, that is Jean Grey. So yes, Sadie Sink is revealed as being Jean Grey. You were right, everyone that said that. Congratulations. I thought it was going to be Carrion because we see this character in the trailers possessing people, and that is more of a trait for a villain, especially for Spider-Man especially, that I would associate with a character like Carrion, who's known for that. He's known for jumping around into these different bodies, and there is a connection to Jackal, so I thought maybe we'd be getting Jackal. I thought Keith David would be Jackal. Nope, Keith David's just a voiceover in this, and instead, Jean is the one possessing people because she has telepathy, which, yes, Jean can control people through their minds with telepathy. However, the way that we interpret telepathy in this film, it's kind of weird. Like, we're going straight up to possession first, which is probably a higher level telepathy power than just reading someone's thoughts or seeing into their mind. And the other thing that I think is kind of weird, actually I think it's very weird, is that we have Jean doing some pretty heinous stuff here. There are people that are deeply injured by her actions. Some people probably are no longer alive because of her actions. And she also mind controls MJ. She fully possesses her and has her kiss Peter and then also throws her to her doom. And sure, Peter saves her, but the fact that Spider-Man wants to come around once he realizes that Jean has been looking for her sister, and that's why she did all of these things, he just quickly is like, you know what, we gotta help her because really she's the victim. And Damage Control are the real villains. I mean, I hear ya, but are we just gonna let Jean Grey off on all these terrible things that she's done? And also keep in mind, this is our first introduction to the character. So as someone that is a lover of Jean Grey for her empathy and her ability to connect with people through emotions and open up people's mind to other ideas, yes, she is a scary character and she's really powerful, but I don't think that's actually what makes Jean Grey such a cool character to me. It's her empathy that I love. And I just feel we didn't really get any of that in here. In fact, Spider-Man is actually the one that shows the empathy in this story to Jean, and that's how he kind of pulls Jean back from the brink. I gotta say, I'm kind of disappointed with the characterization that they went with in this story for Jean Grey. I think Sadie Sink still did a beautiful job with the acting, so I'm not upset with her. I still think she's a great cast for Jean. It makes me nervous that if we're missing the point of Jean Grey, or, you know, what I think is the major point of who she is, what we're going to be doing with the X-Men down the line. And there were a lot of moments here where I was rolling my eyes in the theater because I just felt the characterization felt so off for me. And if you want to do a character who is looking for their siblings and looking to save them and who possesses people, who's a mutant, we actually have one. Her name is Karma. That's her code name. She is a really cool character, and I understand they probably didn't want to go with someone like Karma because she's not as well known. There are probably many people that do not even know who Karma is. But trust me when I say Karma is a super cool character. She's very interesting, and her story actually matches up more with what they wanted to do with this character. If you're gonna make her Jean Grey in the story, then make her Jean Grey. Don't change who the character is to fit your story. Don't use Spider-Man as a launching point for X-Men by taking away from his journey. Because the other thing is, I don't really think we need Jean here. And in the third act of the film, we get completely sidetracked because of all of this. And it was really disappointing, to be honest with you. I just feel like there's enough going on in the movie with Spider-Man and with Peter. We got a lot of characters in it, we got a lot of villains, and they're using that to their advantage because it's all about being overwhelmed by the world. So it didn't even feel like we had too many characters. It's a lot of cameos, but it works with the story. So to put Jean in here and then kind of make it also Jean's story and her origin, I really did not vibe with that as much, unfortunately, which sucks because I am a big X-Men person and I want to be excited about the X-Men. So I'm hoping that where we go from here is somewhere different, and you know, the next time we see Jean, she's going to be more in line with who I feel like she is in the comics. And that's not to say we can't do different things with the characters, but I just feel the core pillars of who they are should be maintained. Honestly, I guess if we think of the MCU like the Ultimate Universe, maybe this version of Jean is more in line with that. I do find that Jean in the Ultimate Universe can be a little bit more ruthless, so maybe that's what we're doing. And, you know, that's not to say that Jean in the main continuity has never hurt people. She has, but I think there's a lot more that needs to happen to Jean for her to be in that really dark place than what we did here in this story. And for that to be our first story with her as well, yeah, I don't know about that. I even thought, speaking of Ultimates, that we were maybe going to do something crazy in this film, and we were going to do Death of Spider-Man, because at the end, when Spider-Man is shot by the Punisher, I didn't know if he was actually going to make it out. So good job on the film for making that feel like a real danger, like a real threat. Jean uses her telepathy to heal, stabilize Peter. That's a whole thing that happens as well, which I don't really know. But I do love how they did Death of Spider-Man and had Punisher still shoot Spider-Man like happens in Ultimates, except Spider-Man is taking a bullet for Captain America there instead of Jean Grey. I like how we did the same thing, but in the end, Spider-Man, he comes out of it. We don't have to worry about that being on the Punisher, because honestly, I watched his special. He's been through enough. So I like that we get a bit of a happy ending here for all of the characters. Jean is probably going upstate. Punisher has a friend. Spider-Man gets to see the love of the city that he protects, how much they love him. He gets his friends back. MJ and Ned are both in this as well. And I loved everything we did with them. And I love seeing these three characters back together. Peter, MJ, and Ned. They're so good together. They have such great chemistry. And we got some really beautiful scenes with Zendaya and Tom. There's some really emotional stuff. And I loved the idea of withholding and us talking about that. That's a huge part of Spider-Man. So that was cool to address through that scene with MJ and Peter. And then we also have the scene where they're discussing who Spider-Man is, because MJ finds his note and she finds out the truth. Finally, that comes out and Peter gets to say the thing he's been waiting to say forever, which is, I love you. And MJ says, I don't know who you are, so I can't say that back. It was really emotional. This is a really cool, emotional film with a lot of great action. My only thing that I really didn't like about it is the insertion of Jean here, because it feels forced to me. And it also doesn't feel like a great representation of the character, in my opinion. So that's all I really have. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I still think this was a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's my favorite Spider-Man movie, but there's a lot of smart storytelling that we're doing here. So enjoy that. Also, Yelena being in it. That was awesome. I loved seeing her here, and she actually felt like she fit quite well in with this, especially as a person who's been through what she's been through. And she's like, I see you, Spider-Man. You're a lonely guy, aren't you? You're a sad, lonely guy. I'm glad you're getting friends. That's good. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts on this movie down in the comments below. I'll see you down there. And until next time, friends, as always, stay nerdy. Bye. And if you love when I talk about superhero stuff, you need to check out more of that by clicking right over here.